Hello and welcome to KJ's Crash Course. I am KJ bringing you exercise 6, publishing in automation to UiPath Assistant. If you've made it this far, congrats. You've done more work than I think a lot of people are willing to, which I really don't think was that much time, was it? To that point, I think I've equipped you with really everything from like learning the tool perspective to get you to that next level. Whether you want to take it, the choice is completely up to you. If this was worth it, great. If not, well, sorry, I tried. I did the best I could. Um, good luck with everything that you want to do. To that point, I think the last thing we do is learn how all of this starts to tie together. And in the final lesson, what we discuss is just kind of what's next, where do I go? And if you do want to continue your learning and you don't care about publishing and automation, feel free to move on to exercise 7, where I cover the SDLC and then just some academy courses and just some resources to help you with your development journey if you deem it to be a fit for you. Okay. To that point, there is the concept of publishing something to UiPath Assistant. So if you want to go ahead and open that up, what you'll notice is you're probably signed in. I'm signed into my crash course, and you'll see there's no automations available. What's super cool is that this little agent, this little buddy here, allows you to push play essentially and run your automation without the need to open up Studio. So I wanted to show you how you can bring all of that together, and then you can go ahead if you wanted to and start demoing what you did, so to speak, especially if you're trying to get involved in more of like the sales engineering track, or maybe you're an AE and you're looking to get a little more technical, whatever the case may be. This would be a really cool way to be like, hey, I learned this technology. This is something super cool. And then you can just hit this button and all of a sudden it's coding stuff on your computer. People like, whoa, how'd you do that? And since you know the back end, you can have a more effective conversation, which is pretty awesome. Okay. So before we do any of that and open up a workflow to publish, let's go ahead and go to cloud.uipath.com. We're going to just publish our, I don't know why I did the new tab there. I didn't mean for it to do that. We're going to publish just the first automation that we build, which was just logging into the application. Okay. So what you'll do is, assuming you're logged in, it may ask you to choose your account. Go ahead and get to whatever account you created at the start of this crash course, or if you already had one, whatever account that's going to get you into Automation Cloud. Okay. And then once this loads, right, what you can do is you'll see this thing here, default tenant. If you're using something at your organization, you may not have access to this. This may not be applicable. You might have a CI/CD process that you need to follow. That's okay. If you're doing it community like we all are, go ahead and click this default tenant button here. And what this will do is this is going to pull you into our Orchestrator tool. In case you haven't noticed, the tool you've been using to build all of this was called Studio. And you can go ahead and do the 6-click Orchestrator tour. Feel free to pause it and follow it and look at that. That's super awesome. I'm just going to give you the basics of what you need. Okay. So once you do that, you're going to see this My Workspace option and then a shared. And what's really cool is you're going to see all the processes. If you decide to use assets, which might be something you use if you want to actually pull variables down and store them in here to use in your automation for that exercise 1 and 2. Queues, if you decide to use them, you'll learn that if you go through foundations and so on and so forth. You're mainly just going to be looking at home, automations that are there, and then you're going to be looking at assets. Okay. So this is really all you're ever going to need. If you want to click around, go nuts. It's a SaaS application. You're not going to break it, but your primary thing is going to be My Workspace, automations, and assets. Okay. So then what you're going to do is we're going to actually pop open one of our first exercises here. So let me navigate to one of them, UiPath, go to KJ's Corner, and then I'm going to open up exercise 1 and then open up main. We are going to publish said automation to Orchestrator, to our personal workspace, and in one published click, we are going to get it to populate here, and then I'm going to show you how you can rename it as well, and that will be the conclusion of this exercise. I didn't cut away this time, like in my other videos where I don't show how long this decides to load, but I figured you made it this far, you might as well see what's actually happening behind the smoke and mirrors, so to speak, giving away all the trade secrets. But we are ready and we're good. We don't need to redo this workflow. It's going to work. You can always retest it if you want, because I think it's super cool and exciting when you get something to work. But we know this will work. It's going to type into, we have the application open so we can test it. So I want to actually go ahead and see this publish button up here in the I would call it the taskbar, right? Click publish. And what you're going to see is a lot of things, but primarily you're not going to need to do much. Right here, you'll see the package name. You could always, can you rename that here? Yes, you can. Leave it as is. It's going to be a nice little identifier because whatever you have in the project, which is what you created, is what the package is going to be called. Okay, so something to know. You'll want that. Usually, if you start following CI/CD and best practices, right, remember it is a developer-centric tool, right? You can add some release notes like, oh, first iteration, right? You really want to do release notes in case you had made a bug or an update, but you'll learn about that as you go through your later foundation. So you won't need to worry about that. You won't need to add any release notes, but then you'll see this publish option. And you should see 3 options: tenant processes feed, personal workspace feed, and custom. For your specific automations, we made this seamless. So if you just make sure your package property is there, your publish options are there, and it says personal workspace feed, this is going to publish to your orchestrator. You should get a project published successfully. And then if you go back to your assistant, you should see this login to Acme exercise awaiting install. Now you can go ahead and hit play, but I want to show you some editing properties in Orchestrator so you could rename this if you wanted to. Okay, so what it'll do is when you see it here, now you'll see, oh look, our process has been updated in my workspace. What process is that? Oh, it's the login to Acme exercise. Oh wow, what a concept. That's really cool. And then we can see it in the my packages. So you can see the description that we had, and then you can see the name and then some other things that you will learn about later. And then right here, what you can do is in processes, go back to that. If you click edit, you can actually go to additional settings and change the display name. So I'm going to just go, Acme login, right? You can add spaces, you can do whatever you want. And then if you want it unattended, you'll learn more about this. You can do it, a bunch of properties, but this additional settings and changing the display name is super cool because then when you hit update, it'll change from login Acme to Acme login. So you see the whole sequence of how this is all pulled together, right? Why is this important? Well, if you're stepping into any journey of explaining what the value of something is, you should probably be able to explain how it actually works. So what we've actually walked through is this is what I do day to day. I help explain people how the basic portfolio of our product works. So what we did is we digitized our process. So if we think about the login, we built an automation inside of UiPath Studio. And then what we did is we deployed that to Orchestrator, which in turn allowed us to publish it back to a robot. So when you think about the low-code space, every single low-code tool out there is, if it's not web-based specifically or completely SaaS-based, there's going to be an agent that's installed on some machine somewhere. It can be Linux, it can be Windows, Mac, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But the big thing is that there's going to be some sort of agent, and that's the executor. For us, that's our software robots. That's what we sell. So you need an IDE, right? Studio to build your things, and then you need some sort of management console. Now, some tooling, they will rope them all together. Here's the beauty. This process, Studio, Orchestrator to Robot, switch out the names. Congratulations. You've just learned how pretty much every low-code, no-code tool works in the market. So don't stop here. Go on. Go learn the other big players in the space. Go learn some niche technologies. If your company is looking for people from a digital transformation perspective, chances are when you go to their website and you download a trial, they're going to give you a version of this and this together. They may not give you the management console, and if they do, even better. Great. You're now learning how all of this fits into continuous improvement, continuous deployment, and following more technical best practices. So if we think about what we did, we built this automation studio, just to summarize. We published it to Orchestrator. It showed up here, and now it's an assistant, so I can go ahead and instead of having Studio open, close that bad boy down, and I never need to worry about opening up Studio to log into this application again. And instead of you just sitting there one day and being like, oh, great, I have an automation, I can use it. You just learned how to build it and deploy it and run it. And watch. There you go. Started debugging, password, login. And you saw that in real time. You didn't even have to worry about Studio going back and forth. And now we're into the application. If I change this to my specific one, my personal one, I figure it's just a really cool way to show you guys here. Let's see if it's going to yell at me here. I might need to redirect. Oh, I'm probably going to have to sign out. This will happen. So if you have multiple accounts, what's really cool is that you can use the same software, right? You can use the same software to log into multiple different things, which is pretty awesome. So I figured I have the time, I might as well show you. I need to log out on this side. So I need to log out here. Log out of UiPath services. Let's make sure it doesn't redirect me back in. It might. The joys of software as a service. Continue with UiPath. I need to sign in with another account. Awesome. Cool. So now I can go back and do that. I can sign out of this. Yep. It's going to say make sure I'm signed out. Yep. We're signed out there. And you'll run into this as well if you have another thing. So we do that. We're good. Let's log out, and then I'll just run something else differently. Let's go back to my assistant. Go to preferences. That's what I should have hit in the first place. Orchestrator settings, and then I have mine KJF2. Click sign in. We have a use assistant in offline mode. Oh, that's pretty cool. Learning things every day, right? No, I want to sign in with another account. Deal, Microsoft. And now I'm signed into my own, which I have a bunch of automations that I've built. The reason I'm saying that login thing is super cool is that I use the same thing to log in on my password. I use it for, a bunch of things, clearing Slack notifications, like scraping. Like a lot of these are demo based, but I use this in my day-to-day. So if I go to my Bank of America, or not that, let me go to my Amex instead. Right, if I go to here, and then I'm on this, instead of me actually, and this is what's really cool, instead of me actually typing in, I literally use a hotkey, and then I can have the hotkey run my automation. Now this doesn't save me any time, but I've got my password stored, and it sends the whole thing, and then it clicks login for me, which is super cool. And I know my passwords, so that way I don't need to worry about ever, locking myself out, which is great. And we can see what my balance is. Let's see how much money I've spent. Oh, that's not that much this month at all. That's awesome. Cool. But you get the idea, right? So just using Assistant to help you out on your day-to-day is super nice. You don't need to have Studio open to run automations. And then just like we saw before, if I wanted to run the RPA challenge, for example, right? We saw that before, right? I can run it from here. So I don't need to, right? When I'm demoing the product or showing it off or whatever the case may be, I don't need to go in Studio and build the whole thing. I've already done it, right? I built this a long time ago. I think it uses Internet Explorer. Let's see. Let's run at superhuman speed and see what's going on. Yeah, it's an Internet Explorer version. Wow. Dark ages, you can tell, but it's still gonna work. And that was before we had all the anchor-based capabilities and the whole nine. Let's see how fast this thing rips. No. There we go. That's an old school right here. Yep, it's out of support, so if anything breaks, it's all good. And you can see it right there. So just a cool little way, publishing the automation. Once again, in summary, right, there's always going to be, with every low-code tool, right, no code, some Studio to build it, some management console, and then some executor to run it. In UiPath, it's Studio, Orchestrator, and robots, and that's exactly the process. We had it in Studio, we published it to Orchestrator, and then we published it to our assistant here. So that is all I wanted to show with exercise 6, how to publish your automations. If you continue on to exercise 7, I am just going to cover some more resources that will be available to you and just have a candid discussion about how I think everyone, regardless of whether you decide to go down a more developmental path or decide to stick more in a functional analyst or whatever role you want, there's the concept of the systems development lifecycle. And I want to just cover that and walk through an example and just really highlight the importance of that. And I wanted to have its own video as a separate conversation as an aside so I can just share that with people. but I think it's going to be super impactful. And then, like I said, I share the additional next steps to go. So if you don't care about the first part and you just want to get straight to the courses, right, feel free to skip through on the next exercise. But otherwise, that is it for exercise 6. Hope you had a nice little candid discussion and saw kind of a little bit of what I do day to day in terms of proving value from the UiPath perspective. This is KJ signing off, and I'll see you for the final lesson shortly. Bye.